It started with a noise. Not loud, not obvious, just a whisper of movement coming from the downstairs hallway in the middle of the night. I remember sitting up in bed, confused. Amanda wasn't next to me. The glow of her phone was gone too, and the bathroom light wasn't on. I glanced at the clock. 2:47 a.m. At first, I thought she might have gone for water or to check the thermostat. Little things people do when they can't sleep. But the longer I waited, the louder that small noise became in my mind. It gnawed at me. I got out of bed, my feet sinking into the plush carpet, and tiptoed toward the hallway. That's when I heard her voice. Low, soft, the kind of voice you use when you don't want to wake anyone. Yeah, I know. I miss you too. I froze. My body locked up like a steel rod had been jammed into my spine. Her voice was coming from the living room. I couldn't see her yet, but I could hear her pacing. No, he doesn't suspect anything, she continued, her tone light, almost playful. You worry too much. It's fine. I told you, he's clueless. My chest tightened. There was no way I was hearing this right. Amanda was practical, direct. She wasn't the kind of person to play games. At least that's what I thought. I edged closer to the living room, careful to keep myself hidden behind the edge of the wall. There she was, her back to me, standing in the middle of the room with her phone pressed to her ear. She wasn't wearing her usual oversized pajama set, but a fitted black tank top and shorts she rarely wore to bed. Her hair was messy, but it wasn't bed messy. It was styled, as if she'd just come from somewhere. Then she laughed. A laugh so full of warmth and flirtation that it made my stomach turn. I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Can't wait. She ended the call. For a moment, I thought about stepping back, pretending I hadn't heard anything, and trying to convince myself this was all innocent. But something inside me broke in that instant. I wasn't going to sit in the dark like a fool. Amanda, I said, my voice sharper than I expected. She whipped around so fast her phone almost slipped from her hand. Her eyes went wide with shock, but only for a second. Then her expression shifted, calm, even defiant. What are you doing up? She asked casually, like nothing was out of the ordinary. What am I doing up? I repeated, stepping fully into the room. What are you doing sneaking around in the middle of the night, dressed like that, whispering sweet nothings to someone on the phone? Her lips twitched, and for a brief moment, I thought she might laugh. Not out of humor, out of mockery. Don't be ridiculous, Matt, she said, rolling her eyes. It was work stuff. It's late, and I didn't want to disturb you. Work stuff. I took another step closer, the heat rising in my chest. At 3 a.m, wearing that? Do you think I'm an idiot? Clearly, you're acting like one, she snapped, crossing her arms. Not everything is some big conspiracy. God, Matt, you're paranoid. There it was, that calm, calculated tone she used when she wanted to shut me down. But I wasn't backing down this time. Who were you talking to? I demanded. I told you, it was work. Don't lie to me, Amanda. My voice echoed through the room, louder than I intended. Her eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. For a split second, her mask slipped. Guilt flickered across her face, but she quickly buried it under a wall of cold defiance. I don't have to explain myself to you, she said, her voice icy now. You're acting crazy, Matt. Go back to bed. I stared at her, my mind racing, my hands shaking. Every instinct screamed that she was hiding something, but I couldn't prove it. Yet, I'm not going anywhere, I said quietly. Not until you tell me the truth. Her eyes locked with mine, and for the first time in years, I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. She didn't look scared or sorry. She looked annoyed. You want the truth? She said, her voice dripping with venom. The truth is, you're smothering. Always asking questions, always suspicious. Maybe if you trusted me, we wouldn't have this problem. And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in the middle of the darkened room. Fists clenched, my heart pounding in my ears. I didn't sleep that night, and I sure as hell wasn't letting this go. Something was happening, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. The next morning, Amanda acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed as she scrolled through her phone at the kitchen table, and asked me if I wanted eggs or cereal. It was infuriating. How could she sit there, so calm, when I felt like a grenade had gone off in my chest. I didn't answer. I just watched her. Every movement she made, every glance at her phone. It all seemed choreographed now, like she was trying too hard to play her part. When she finally left for work, I stayed home. I called in sick, though my boss could probably tell something was off by my clipped tone. Once I was alone, I made a decision I'd never thought I'd make. I was going to dig. Her laptop was the first place I looked. She always kept it on the desk in the guest room, and luckily, she wasn't smart enough to set a password on it. At first, I didn't find anything suspicious. Emails from her boss, spreadsheets, presentation notes. It all looked legit. But then I saw a folder buried deep in the documents. It was called Personal, which seemed innocent enough. But when I opened it, my stomach flipped. Inside were photos. Not of us, not of her family or friends, but of her in outfits I'd never seen before. Tight dresses, lingerie, even a couple of topless shots. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. She never took photos like this for me. Ever. And then there were the messages. I found them in a draft email folder. Unsent but saved like little bombs waiting to detonate. The messages were addressed to someone named Mark. They weren't long, just snippets of plans and intimacy. Can't wait for our weekend together. You make me feel alive. Last night was amazing. I can still feel your hands on me. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath ragged. There it was, the proof. I had wondered, doubted, even gaslit myself into thinking I was imagining things. But this was undeniable. Amanda had been lying to me, living a double life right under my nose. I couldn't sit still. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. Who the hell was Mark? Where had they been meeting? And worst of all, how long had this been going on? I started piecing things together, rewinding every little moment from the past few months. The work trips, the late nights, the sudden shift in her mood. It all made sense now. I even remembered the perfume. Stronger, sweeter than what she usually wore. Lingering on her when she'd come home late. My phone buzzed, breaking me out of my spiral. It was Amanda, texting me like everything was fine. Amanda, hey, babe, how's your day? Feeling better? I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched. I wanted to confront her right then, over text, but something stopped me. I needed more. She'd deny it, spin it, twist it into something that made me look like the bad guy. No, if I was going to confront her, I needed to be ready. I needed to catch her in a way she couldn't weasel out of. I spent the rest of the day doing something I never thought I'd have to do. Tracking my wife. I knew she had a gym session that evening. She'd been obsessed with working out lately, which now felt less like a healthy habit and more like a way to impress someone else. So I waited. When she left the house, I followed. I stayed a few cars behind, my hands gripping the wheel so hard they ached. She didn't go to the gym. Instead, she pulled into a small parking lot near a park. My heart pounded as I watched her get out of the car, phone in hand, and walk toward a bench under a cluster of trees. And then he appeared. Mark. He was tall, muscular, and looked like he'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. He grinned when he saw her, and she practically leapt into his arms. They kissed. Right there, in the open, like they didn't have a care in the world. My vision blurred with rage. I wanted to storm out of my car and confront them, scream at her, at him. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. Click. Her arms around his neck. Click. Their lips meeting. Click. Them walking hand in hand toward the park trail, disappearing into the trees. I sat there, shaking, as the reality of it all sank in. This wasn't just a fling. This was a full-blown betrayal. And the worst part? She didn't even seem to care if she got caught. By the time Amanda came home that night, I was a volcano on the verge of erupting. I'd spent hours staring at the photos I'd taken, each one burning into my mind like a brand. Her lies, her audacity. It was all so brazen. She had kissed him out in the open, like I didn't exist. The door clicked open, and there she was, looking every bit the picture of a devoted wife. She smiled at me, her cheeks slightly flushed from the cool night air. Hey, babe, she said, dropping her gym bag by the door. You feeling any better? Where were you? I asked, cutting straight to the point. She hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. The gym. she replied smoothly, pulling off her sneakers and tossing them aside. I told you this morning. I stood up from the couch, holding her gaze. Funny. I didn't know the gym had trails in the woods. Her face barely flickered, but I caught it. A crack in the mask. What are you talking about? She asked, her tone defensive now. Don't, I said, my voice low but steady. I reached for my phone on the coffee table, pulling up the photos. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I turned the screen toward her. The blood drained from her face as she stared at the first photo, the one of her kissing Mark. She opened her mouth, then closed it, like a fish gasping for air. You followed me? That's what you're focusing on? I barked, my voice rising. Not the fact that you've been sneaking around behind my back? Lying to me? Kissing him? Amanda's expression shifted in an instant. The shock melted away, replaced by something colder, sharper. You had no right to spy on me, she snapped. That's disgusting, Matt. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. Disgusting? You want to talk about disgusting? How about cheating on your husband and lying about it for months? She crossed her arms, her posture defiant now. Maybe if you weren't so controlling, I wouldn't have had to find comfort somewhere else. Her words hit me like a slap, but the rage bubbling inside me kept me standing. Controlling? Are you serious? I trusted you, Amanda. I didn't even question all those late nights and work trips. I gave you the benefit of the doubt, and this is how you repay me. Oh, please, she said, rolling her eyes. You've been distant for months, Matt. Always stressed, always in your head. What was I supposed to do? Sit around waiting for you to notice me? You mean like I've been waiting for you to act like my wife instead of sneaking off with your boyfriend? That one landed. She flinched, her jaw tightening. But instead of apologizing, she doubled down. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need a boyfriend, she hissed. The room went silent. Her words hung in the air, sharp and heavy. For a moment I couldn't speak. The sheer cruelty of it stunned me. I stared at her, searching for any trace of the woman I'd married. The woman I thought I knew. But she wasn't there. This version of Amanda was a stranger. Cold, spiteful, unrecognizable. You really don't feel any guilt, do you? I finally said, my voice quieter now. Not even a little. She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed her bag and turned toward the stairs. I'm not doing this with you, Matt. I'm tired, and I'm not going to stand here and let you play the victim. I watched her walk away, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Every instinct told me to follow her, to drag this conversation out until she broke down and admitted she was wrong. But something stopped me. It was the look in her eyes. There was no regret, no remorse, just contempt. In that moment I knew the truth. She wasn't sorry. She never would be. And if I wanted to salvage even a shred of dignity, I needed to stop chasing answers from someone who didn't care enough to give them. She slammed the bedroom door, and I stood there in the silence, my heart pounding. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I hated her more for what she'd done, or if I hated myself for letting it get this far. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, Amanda's words replaying in my head like a cruel loop. Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need a boyfriend. How did we go from 8 years of marriage to this? When did I become boring to the woman who once called me her everything? By the time the sun came up, I knew one thing. I couldn't just let this slide. Amanda had gone too far, and I wasn't going to sit quietly while she turned our marriage into a mockery. When she came downstairs, she didn't even acknowledge me. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself coffee, and acted like the night before hadn't happened. It was as if the confrontation hadn't even rattled her. I got up, the anger simmering beneath my skin. "We need to talk," I said. She sighed, leaning against the counter with her mug in hand. "Matt, I'm not doing this again. I told you." "No, Amanda. You didn't tell me anything." I cut her off. "All you've done is deflect, gaslight, and make excuses. So here's the deal. You're going to explain exactly what's going on, or I'm done." Her eyes narrowed. "Done? What does that even mean?" "It means I'm not playing your games anymore," I said, stepping closer. "You think I'm going to sit here and let you walk all over me? Think again. If you want to be with Mark, then fine. Pack your things and leave. She set her mug down with a loud clink, crossing her arms. You're being dramatic, Matt. This isn't black and white. Black and white. I laughed, but it was hollow. You're cheating on me, Amanda. You've been lying to my face for months. What's gray about that? For the first time, I saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. But then her walls went back up, stronger than ever. You don't understand what it's like to feel ignored, Matt. You bury yourself in work, in routines, and you expect me to just exist in the background. And your solution was to hook up with someone else instead of talking to me? She hesitated, and for a moment, I thought she might apologize, might show even a shred of regret. But instead, she shrugged. Maybe I was looking for something you couldn't give me, she said, her tone biting. That was it. The last straw. I grabbed my jacket and keys, not caring where I was going or what I'd do. I just needed to get out of that house before I said something I couldn't take back. Where are you going now? She called after me, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Running away? Real mature, Matt. I didn't answer. I slammed the door behind me and drove off, my mind racing. I didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was war. And if Amanda thought she could humiliate me and walk away unscathed, she was dead wrong. As I drove aimlessly through the city, an idea began to take shape. It wasn't just about confronting her anymore. It was about taking back control. That's when it hit me. I wasn't going to confront her again. I wasn't going to fight her or beg her for answers. I was going to disappear. No explanations. No arguments. No warning. Just gone. If she wanted to live her life without me, I'd give her exactly what she wanted, but on my terms. She wouldn't get to spin her story, wouldn't get to blame me for her mistakes. Instead, she'd wake up one day and realize she had destroyed everything for nothing. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of clarity. A plan was forming, and this time, I wasn't going to let her win. The time I pulled back into the driveway that night, I was a man with a mission. My decision to leave wasn't impulsive. It was precise, calculated. If Amanda thought she could humiliate me, lie to me, and walk away unscathed, she had no idea what was coming. The house was dark when I stepped inside. Amanda was upstairs in the bedroom, her silhouette faintly visible through the cracked door. She was scrolling on her phone, her face illuminated by the screen, probably texting him. I didn't say a word. I didn't want to tip her off. Instead, I went straight to the office, locked the door behind me, and started setting my plan into motion. The first step was simple: securing my finances. I logged into our shared accounts, transferring my half into a private account I'd set up earlier that day. I left enough behind to cover the bills for the next month. Amanda wouldn't even notice it was missing at first. Next, I packed. I didn't bother with the sentimental things. Photos, keepsakes, mementos. They didn't mean anything anymore, not after what she'd done. Instead, I focused on essentials. Clothes, my laptop, important documents. I kept everything minimal, stuffing it all into a single duffel bag. By the time I was done, it was past midnight. Amanda still hadn't come downstairs, and the house was eerily quiet. I stood in the living room for a moment, taking it all in. This was the house where we had planned our future, hosted dinners, celebrated anniversaries. But now it felt hollow, a monument to a life that no longer existed. I left a single note on the kitchen counter, folded neatly. It wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. You wanted freedom. Now you have it. Don't call. Don't text. We're done. I walked out the front door, locking it behind me for the last time. I didn't go far, not yet. I checked into a motel on the outskirts of town, paying cash to avoid leaving a trail. The place was dingy, the kind of spot where people go to disappear. Perfect. Sitting on the lumpy bed, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. In the morning, I made the final moves to seal my exit. I deactivated my social media accounts, forwarded my mail to a P.O. box, and switched my phone number. Amanda would wake up to an empty house, an empty bank account, and no way to reach me. But I wasn't done yet. As I sipped the bitter motel coffee, I opened my laptop and uploaded the photos I'd taken of her and Mark. It wasn't spite, it was justice. I sent them anonymously to a few of our mutual friends, people who had always seemed suspiciously loyal to Amanda. Let them see the truth for themselves. I wasn't proud of it, but I wasn't ashamed either. Amanda had destroyed our marriage with her lies and betrayal. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd show her I wasn't afraid to do the same. By the end of the day, everything was set. My resignation email was sent to my job. My new living arrangements confirmed. I was ready to vanish. As I sat in that motel room, staring out the window at the flickering neon sign, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. Amanda might have thought she'd won, but when she woke up to an empty house and no trace of me, she'd realized the truth. This was her loss, not mine. I stayed off the grid for the next few days, watching the chaos unfold from a safe distance. Amanda hadn't called or texted. Not that she could. My phone number was gone, and I'd wiped all traces of myself from her life. But I knew her too well to think she'd just let it go. The first hint of her reaction came through a mutual friend, Sarah, who called me unexpectedly. I debated ignoring it, but eventually picked up. Matt. Her voice was cautious, unsure. Is everything okay? I just got something weird. What do you mean? I asked, already knowing what she was referring to. Well, Amanda called me this morning, completely freaking out. She said you left, but she wouldn't say why. Then I saw these pictures. Her voice trailed off, heavy with unspoken judgment. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to see where she'd take it. Matt, what's going on? Are those photos real? They're real, I said simply. Sarah was silent for a moment, then let out a low whistle. Wow. Wow. I don't even know what to say. Amanda is telling everyone you're overreacting, that it's not what it looks like. Of course she is, I replied, my tone flat. She's good at spinning things to make herself the victim. She's furious, Matt. She's saying you abandoned her. That made me laugh. An actual bitter laugh. I didn't abandon her, Sarah. She abandoned us. She checked out of our marriage long before I walked out that door. Sarah hesitated, and I could hear the gears turning in her head. She wasn't sure if she should side with me or Amanda. But the photos spoke louder than words, and I could tell she didn't want to defend her friend. Look, I said after a pause. I'm not asking you to pick sides. I just need you to understand that I did what I had to do. Amanda made her choices. I'm making mine. Sarah sighed. I get it. I do. I didn't see this coming. Neither did I said, and with that I ended the call. Later that evening, I got an email from Amanda. The subject line was blank, but the message was anything but empty. How dare you humiliate me like this? You had no right to send those photos. Do you know how much damage you've caused? People are asking questions. I'm a laughingstock because of you. It went on like that for several paragraphs, full of blame and indignation, but not a single word of apology. I closed the email without replying. Over the next few days, more messages trickled in. Some from Amanda, others from friends who had clearly been fed her version of events. The narrative was the same. I'd overreacted. Amanda had been pushed into Mark's arms, and I was the one who had blown everything up by leaving. But the truth had already spread. The photos were undeniable. People who once idolized Amanda began to distance themselves. The few who stayed loyal only did so out of habit, not conviction. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, Mark. It was a Thursday afternoon when his name popped up in my inbox. His email was short but dripping with arrogance. Hey, Matt. I think we need to talk man-to-man. Amanda told me you're upset, but I want to clear the air. Maybe we can meet up? Let me know. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. The sheer audacity of him, acting like we could have a civilized conversation, like this was some kind of misunderstanding. I didn't reply. He wasn't worth my time. But Amanda, she wasn't getting off that easy. 2 days later, she finally called from an unknown number. I debated picking up but decided to hear her out. Matt. Her voice was shaky, hesitant. Can we talk? You've got 5 minutes, I said coldly. Please, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know what you want me to say. I screwed up. Okay? I made a mistake. A mistake, I snapped. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. You didn't make a mistake, Amanda. You made a choice. over and over again. There was silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought she'd hung up. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she finally said, her voice small. I felt trapped, Matt. I needed something more." "You needed more?" I repeated, the words bitter on my tongue. "And now you have it. Congratulations." "Matt, please," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "We can fix this. We can go to therapy, start fresh. I'll end things with Mark. I swear." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't get it, do you? There's nothing left to fix. You killed it, Amanda. You and Mark and all your lies." She tried to speak again, but I hung up before she could. That was the last time I spoke to her. The fallout continued around us. Friends choosing sides, whispers spreading through our social circles. Amanda tried to salvage her reputation, but the damage was done. And as for me, I didn't care anymore. I was already gone, and there was no looking back. The weeks after I disappeared were eerily quiet. I had expected more chaos, more desperate attempts from Amanda to reel me back in. Instead, the silence only deepened. My new life had begun, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. I rented a small apartment in a neighboring city. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom unit with peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was mine. I didn't have to share it with anyone. No Amanda, no lies, just me. Still, the memories haunted me. Every time I passed a couple holding hands or saw a photo of a smiling bride and groom on social media, my chest tightened. It wasn't that I missed Amanda. I didn't. What I missed was the idea of her, the life I thought we were building. But the anger, that hadn't gone anywhere. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects and picking up new skills to keep my mind occupied. Slowly, I started to rebuild. I wasn't just creating a new life. I was creating a version of myself Amanda couldn't touch. Then, out of nowhere, Amanda found a way to haunt me again. It started with another email. This one wasn't angry or accusatory, it was pathetic. "Matt, I don't know where you are or how to reach you, but I need you to know I'm sorry. Mark is gone. He turned out to be nothing like I thought, and I made a terrible mistake. Please, can we just talk?" I stared at the screen, my hands trembling with a mix of rage and disgust. Was she seriously trying to crawl back now that her little fantasy had blown up in her face? I didn't reply, but she didn't stop there. A few days later, Sarah texted me. "Hey, just a heads up. Amanda's been asking around about you. She said she wants to make things right. Right? Like she could somehow undo the months of deceit, the public humiliation, the endless nights I'd spent questioning my own worth." I ignored it, but Amanda wasn't done. A week later, I came home from work to find a letter taped to my door. It was handwritten, the penmanship shaky, like she'd rushed to write it. "Matt, I know you hate me, and I don't blame you, but I need to see you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just need closure. Please, if you can find it in your heart to meet me, I'll be at the park where we used to go on Sundays. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. I crumpled the letter in my fist, furious that she'd managed to track me down. How had she found me, and what made her think I owed her anything? But as much as I wanted to stay away, something inside me stirred. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't longing. It was a need to put an end to this once and for all. The next evening, I drove to the park. It was nearly empty, the sun casting long shadows across the grass. I parked far enough away that she wouldn't see me coming and walked to the spot she'd mentioned. There she was, sitting on the bench we used to share, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of her choices had finally settled on her shoulders. She saw me before I could decide whether or not to turn back. Her face lit up with a mix of relief and desperation. "Matt," she said, standing quickly, "you came." "I'm not here to talk about us," I said, my voice cold. "I'm here to tell you to leave me alone." Her smile faltered, but she pressed on. "Please just hear me out. I've lost everything, Matt. Mark, he wasn't who I thought he was. He cheated on me with someone else. Can you believe that? After everything, I held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "I don't care about Mark. I don't care about your sob story. What I care about is the fact that you destroyed our marriage and then had the audacity to blame me for it." Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. I know I messed up, she said, her voice breaking. I know I hurt you, but can't we just try again? I'm still the woman you fell in love with, Matt. Deep down, I'm still her. I laughed, bitter and sharp. The woman I fell in love with doesn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. And even if she did, I don't want her back. Her tears spilled over, but I didn't stay to watch her cry. I turned and walked away, the weight of her betrayal finally lifting with every step I took. For the first time, I felt free. Not just from Amanda, but from the ghost of what we'd once been. And I wasn't looking back. It's been 6 months since I walked away from Amanda for good. 6 months since I packed my bag, left that note, and disappeared. Looking back, it feels like a lifetime ago. Like that version of me died the day I found out about her affair. Rebuilding wasn't easy. The pain doesn't vanish overnight, and the anger doesn't burn out quickly. It lingers, creeping in during quiet moments, when your guard is down. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything over and over in my mind. What I could have done differently, what I missed. But somewhere along the way, the pain started to fade. I threw myself into new routines, new hobbies, and even new friendships. I started going to the gym, not to impress anyone, but for myself. I joined a local hiking group and rediscovered how much I loved being outdoors. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like a person again. Amanda reached out one last time about a month ago. I got an email from her that simply read, "Matt, I'm sorry for everything. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to tell you that. I hope you find peace." I didn't reply, not because I hated her. I didn't. By then, the anger had cooled into indifference. I didn't reply because she was no longer part of my story. She was just a chapter one had closed. A few weeks after her email, I ran into Sarah at a coffee shop. She looked surprised to see me but smiled warmly. "Matt, hey," she said, pulling me into an unexpected hug. "You look good." "Thanks," I said, laughing. "How are you?" We chatted for a bit, and eventually the conversation shifted to Amanda. "She's moved out of the old house," Sarah said. "She's living with her parents now. I think she's really struggling." I nodded, not sure what to say. "She brought this on herself, Matt," Sarah continued. "But for what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. You seem happier now." I smiled at her genuinely. "I am. For the first time in a long time. I've learned a lot from this mess. About love, trust, and the importance of boundaries. About recognizing your own worth and walking away when someone disrespects it. If there's one piece of advice I'd give to anyone reading this, it's this. Never settle for less than what you deserve. Love isn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. And trust? Once it's broken, it rarely heals the same way. Amanda thought I'd stay. She thought I'd tolerate the lies, the betrayal, the disrespect. But I didn't. I took revenge on my unfaithful wife by disappearing without a trace. Not to hurt her, but to save myself. And now I'm free.